Okay, so today we're going to go ahead and revisit the idea of negative exponents. So recall our rules of negative exponents that we talked about a couple weeks ago. If I have some exponent a to a negative exponent n, what this translates into is going ahead, putting the a basically in the denominator of a fraction and making the exponent positive. Okay? If we have the exact opposite, and we have a negative exponent in the denominator, it's going to go ahead and become a positive a to the n. This is what's going on. Okay, so we know that any variable can be written over 1. We know this. If that variable has a negative exponent, what is happening is we're switching the numerator and denominator, so basically flipping the fraction over, putting the 1 in the top, the variable in the bottom, and that makes the exponent positive. Okay. And we use these rules a lot for division of monomials, and that's kind of where we're going with this. So negative exponents are a form of division. So because they're a form of division, and because these negative exponents switch places and are in fractions, fraction rules apply. Which means we may have to simplify our fractions. But the one thing we want to not do is never work with negative exponents. Okay? So the first thing we're going to make sure we do is when we're going through these operations, we want to make sure that all of our exponents are positive. We're going to go through a bunch of basic examples today, kind of get you in the groove of it, and then we're going to do some more complicated examples that show the simplification process of fractions. Okay, so don't let this be scary. This is really simple to do if you just take your time to make sure all your exponents are positive. So let's go ahead and look at a few examples here. The first one I have is 5 to the negative 1. All right. I can't take anything to a negative power, so I want to think of this 5 as being written over 1. And those two positions are going to slip. The 1 is going to go into the numerator, and the 5 is going to go into the denominator, which makes my exponent positive. All right. So my 1 goes on the top, my 5 goes to the bottom. It's to the positive 1 power. Now I don't need to write anything to the positive 1 power, so I could just write this as 1 over 5, and I'm done. Okay. Additionally, if we have a negative exponent on the outside of something, that means that each of the pieces here inside are taken to a negative exponent, which means what we need to do is switch our numerator and denominator because they're both being taken to a negative 1 power. All right. If you want to, you could think of it as 1 to the negative 1 over 2 to the negative 1. I wouldn't go there, but that's how you could think about it. What needs to do is each of these needs to swap places. So the 2 needs to go in the numerator, the 1 needs to go in the denominator. They're both for the first power. All right. The first power just means I have 2 over 1, and because this is a whole number, I really just have the number 2. Okay. If we have a negative exponent that is not to the first power, we still want to go ahead and start off with treating it the exact same way. Okay, so we want to think about this 2 as being over 1. I have a negative 3 exponent. I want to go ahead and swap my places, put the 1 on the top, put the 2 on the bottom, and make that exponent positive. Now 2 to the third power is something we can do. Remember, that's 1 over 2 times 2 times 2, which gives me 1 over 8. All right. The same thing will happen if we have a negative exponent in the denominator of a fraction. They are still going to go ahead and switch places. So my 3 will come up to the top as a positive power. My 1 will switch to the bottom. Anything over 1 is itself, so I really just have 3 squared. And 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Okay. If there is a negative on the outside of the number, it doesn't take any precedence. We may or may not do any of those examples today. Let's go ahead and look at variables now. All right. So if I have a to the negative 4, this is the same thing as saying I have a to the negative 4 over 1. I'm going to go ahead and switch my places. So my 1's going to come on the top, my a is going to go to the bottom, and my exponent will become positive. All right? And that's all I can do. This is not a number, so even though my exponent is not 1, I can't do anything with this unless I'm given some sort of replacement value for a. Same thing happens if I go ahead and I have an x to the negative 2 power in the denominator, which means they're going to go ahead and switch places. My x is going to come to the top as a positive. My 1 goes in the denominator. Anything over 1 is itself, so I just have x squared. Okay? Now, if I have two different things inside of my, I actually have a fraction, the top is negative, the bottom is negative, they are both need to switch places. How you want to think about negative exponents is they're unhappy and they need to move. All right? So my a to the negative 2 wants to go to the bottom of the fraction. My b to the negative 3 wants to go to the top of the fraction. What that's going to give me is I have b to the positive 3 on the top because it switched places, and a to the positive 2 in the denominator. And because a and b are not alike, I can't do anything with this as it is. We also got to remember the idea of parentheses. So in this example here, I have 3b to the negative 2. There's no parentheses here, which means this negative exponent only applies to the b and not to the 3. Right? Which means the only thing that's going to move into the denominator of any fraction is the b. The 3 is therefore going to remain on the top. My b is going to move to the bottom, and it's going to become positive. Another thing that you need to be aware of with this, I'm going to use the exact same example here. If I have negative 3 to the b to the negative 2, okay? The only thing that's still going to move is this b. The negative on the outside of the 3 does not follow this rule. This rule is only for negative exponents. So in other words, my negative 3 is going to stay on the top. My b is going to come down as a positive exponent, and I'm going to be done. So we're going to work with this a little bit, play around with the rule. This rule is also going to follow up with another rule called the quotient rule, which you won't use as often as you're going to go ahead and use this. So go ahead and practice on the examples, and I'll see you in the next video.